Okay, here's another submission of mine for the month's theme on the Facebook group, Stampscapes group. It's stormy weather, I think it is. I don't know, did I forget the name? Storm or something like that. But anyways, I wanted to try to create this scene. I was thinking about this ship here, and I have this little face of a boy. The boy is from Fruit Basket Upset. Look at that disturbing imagery. But I was thinking about kind of a Robinson Crusoe type of thing with a shipwreck, because I happen to have this ship here, right here from a Fistful of Stamps, and both these companies are long gone now. Well, Fruit Basket Upset especially. It was probably gone in the 90s sometime, but anyway, different emotional quality to this. This one's all about kind of having things a little bit unsettled. So if you notice, the angle of this is kind of tilted, so there's no balance to it, okay? And I thought it would create this kind of unease and sort of a dynamic kind of arrangement as far as the composition goes. Then we have this ship, you know, which would probably go like that, right, due to this shadow and whatever, not a horizon line, but that has been tipped this way to kind of give the idea of this, you know, man overboard type of scenario. And then this lightning bolt has been skewed, so everything's kind of off a little bit, you know, to kind of I wanted kind of a tension and heightened kind of a emotion within the scene. And then the color scheme, I didn't go with blues. I have a little bit of blue in here that you can kind of see, but it's all kind of a muddier type of murky color scheme. A little bit, for the most part, it's warm tone scene, but I mean a cool tone scene, but I have these warm undertones in here just to kind of help with the idea of this passage of light within the scene, as far as a color scheme, a temperature scheme, I guess you'd say, where there's a little bit of warmth here, and anywhere that's kind of illuminated by that lightning bolt strike is also kind of in that warmth. So, but it's kind of a disturbing warmth, I guess you can say, or that's what I was going for at least. So, as I say at the end of this video, I usually say, okay, this was a lot of fun, but I don't know, it was just one of those things. I wanted to kind of push the emotional, I don't know, whatever, range of my scenes. This is something that's opposite of usually the thing that I'm going for, and somewhat of a serene, peaceful type of scene, you know, that I'd want to be in. I mean, this isn't something that I'd want to be in at all, but it makes for kind of an interesting panel. I think something like this would be interesting as like a second or an inner spread for something. Like if I'm doing a 3-page spread for a story on like a Robinson Crusoe type of thing, I'd probably have that ship or something like that in a nice sunset scene, you know, drifting off, and as you move along the storyline, you know, this is kind of like something where it's, you know, one of the emotional kind of significant passages within the storyline. And then, you know, the next one might be something on a tropical island or something like that, you know. I don't know, it would work better as maybe a 5-page or 5-scene spread or something like that. But I think this works good as a kind of a, you know, that, you know, climactic portion of the introduction, I guess, of a story. So, anyways, interesting scene to work on. A lot of kind of a turbulence and emotional types of qualities to it, I think, and kind of an interesting process working through it. Kind of got really ugly in there at one point in time with the color schemes, which I guess I shouldn't, you know, shouldn't come as a surprise to me, because that's was something I was kind of going after, and that's indeed what I got. But I don't know, kind of mellowed out a little bit with the use of the pigment inks and the different types of bleed-proof white splatter paint applications in here, so I don't know. It's kind of a semi-fun result, I guess. Anyways, if you watch it, hope you enjoy it, and thanks for tuning into the channel. Okay, the theme for the month is, I think, stormy weather, and for the Yahoo, not the Yahoo, but the Facebook group. And I've been inspired by a lot of the scenes I've been seeing from everyone, not only for that theme, but just overall. But I thought I would do something with that. I happen to have this old Stamp by Fruit basket upset. If you've been a stamper for a really long time, you might recognize the name of that company. They were out of Seattle, Washington. For some reason, I thought they were Bay Area, California. But anyways, kind of horrific stamp of a child in the water here, and I thought I would use that in conjunction with a fistful of stamps. This ship right here, like a little shipwreck type of situation. But oh, my storyline is that the child was saved. He shipwrecked on a remote beach and was rescued after learning the ways of the wild, so no need to fear. But anyways, I'm going to work it around my stamp, the Great Wave, or maybe the Great Wave is working around this. You know, this is definitely going to be the focal point, but this is a kind of a secondary focal point. But as far as the foundation of the composition, I'll go with the wave. Now, one of the things I want in something like this is I want a lot of drama, okay? And one of the things that I do is I kind of skew things a little bit. I make things kind of unbalanced so that there's a natural kind of a dynamic angle to the horizon. Okay, so I don't know if it's the horizon so much either, but it's kind of a to the overall compositional, what do you call it, balance, I guess you can say. So I've taken this Great Wave stamp, and instead of stamping it directly across, I have it going down there. So everything's kind of tipping, so everything's kind of unsettled, you know, and that's kind of what I want in this type of thing, or this type of composition. Alright, now, let's see, I'm trying to decide. I think I'll put this boy here. Lower in the composition means that it's closer to us, and I'll stamp this. Now this is a square, and I don't want a square, so for the most part I'll be kind of wiping away a lot of the image before I make my impression, because I don't want the whole thing to stamp. So I will grab a, maybe I'll do it with a moist paper towel here, and I want to remove like 100% of the ink off of certain areas around the boy's head, and I want to really soften up the edges here. Okay. Really want to get rid of the squared off edges, okay? So wiping that pretty good. So it'll be something like that. Definitely fear. Okay, I'll put this at an angle too, I think. I'll put his head down about like so. Okay, yeah, I didn't take off quite as much as I would have wanted to. Right here it's still a bit sharp, but that'll be okay. Alright, let's fill in with some additional waves. This is the waves medium. Doesn't have to be a perfect overlap or anything like that. Okay. Yeah, let's mask them off. Quite a disturbing scene already. But this boy grew up to be a scholar and developed new maritime safety equipment for ships. How about that? Okay, let's see here. I want some distant waves. Okay, so this is the wave small. And I'm trying to think. I could go at a different angle, but I'm trying to think of the angle. That's a bit repetitious. Yeah. I can go extreme. I don't think if I did this, then it would almost, it would be too much. It would be right in the middle. Or I can come out like that. It's a little bit off center like that. And another one like that. Alright, let's keep this movement going. By the way, I'm working on a half piece of letter format. It's elongated. I don't know. I felt like doing longer scenes today, so. Something like that. I might go with another one too, but let's sandwich it. Okay, here's my tall ship. Yeah, yes, pigs can fly used to double cut. That's a double cut right there on this cushion. That was a pretty good way to do it. That was a really good mounting system, but it really required two different adhesives. A fistful of stamps. They must have been Clint Eastwood spaghetti western fans, I'm taking it. For the A Fistful of Dollars movies. Okay, this tall ship is kind of sinking, so let's see. I'm going to remove a lot of the ink right there for that little horizon, or that little ripple area. I'll go with something like that. What do you call it when it goes to the side? It's listing, right? Or something? Okay. I think I've used that ship before, but I can't remember. It's been so long. Alright. Let's see. Let's put in some additional... When I said I'll sandwich it, I mean I'll have some waves kind of behind. hand in front of. Okay, so it's something like that. And as far as like a lightning strike, want something to illuminate the scene. Okay, sky figure. Stamping it on black because I want it pretty dramatic, so I'm going to remove some of this ink here on the perimeter, just so that it kind of blends in with the surrounding a little bit more. And let's see, where do I want this? Do I want this in the distance, or do I want it to look like it's, you know, really threatening that tall ship? So it's like making kind of matters worse, maybe. On my last scene, for the theme, there was rain, but it wasn't very. I wouldn't call it very stormy at all. Just a few teardrops of rain. Okay, cloud cumulus. Blotting off around the edges, and I'll have my billowing clouds kind of facing the lightning, so that it looks like it's illuminated by the lightning. Okay, overlapping into the lightning a little bit. Okay, like that. Probably overlapped by about, I don't know, good quarter inch, half inch or so. And remember the transition where it meets the lightning right here. I'm wiping off a lot of this too, you know, kind of with a dry paper towel, not a wet one. Alright, now if you're wiping it off in black, it is fairly dark, so give it a pretty good firm removal of ink, especially on the bare edge. Okay. Alright, now, while I want to overlap a decent amount, I don't want to overlap, you know, you don't want to overlap like an inch into it, but quarter inch, half inch, you know, something like that. Just plenty of kind of tolerance for it. That way you get that nice, kind of sandwiched, blended in cloud and cloud with lightning, okay? Alright, let's add some more clouds. Let's mask off our ocean down here. If I get a little bit into the ocean, it's fine. Okay, always have the clouds kind of facing towards your source of light. Okay. Kind of a dramatic composition, but while it's dramatic and unsettling, I do want the scene to take on a certain, I don't know if the word is beauty, but the light, just nature's wrath, the lighting of it, I want it to be, you know, illuminated, and I want the lighting to be done well in spite of the fact it's kind of wrecked the boy's ship. Or from just a pure visual surface quality, I guess. You know, I want it to be kind of nice. All right, we have a pretty in-depth composition right here. Okay, now this is a fairly large composition as well. Like I said, it's half sheet, and I normally work in a quarter size sheet. One of these days I'll do a full size, but I'm going to make this go fairly quickly, I think. That's what I want, at least. So I'm going to work fairly monochromatically. All right, I'll add in some additional hue during the process, but I want to get a quick kind of a lighting scheme down here. Okay, now everything in here kind of blends together fairly well, but I do want to create, you know, quite a good deal of separation right here. We have our lightning right here, and that's going to be illuminated, so I'm going to make the area around it in the sky darker, and then I'll have to do something to separate the ocean from sky, and then this right here is foreground area, and of course here's the subject of the scene, so I'm going to make him kind of stand out a little bit more too. So there's going to be a great deal of you know, this kind of oscillation of lights and darks. My sponge tip here is really old. It's dry. Let's see, this one right here looks good. Okay, let's start off kind of in the distance a little bit. Distance from the lightning, okay. Now, if you've watched my other videos or videos about lighting, you'll often hear me say, well, I mean, it might matter a little bit, but for the most part, lighting can be just anything that you define, all right? There's not really right or wrong, you know, in terms of doing this. Now, I mean, I have this character right here, and just in general, I probably want it to stand out, right? So I don't want to just darken up everything around him, like the whole area, okay? Because you're taking kind of attention away from the subject matter if you do that, or kind of the dominant kind of characters. The character can be a wave or something like that too. It doesn't have to be like a person or a living thing like an animal. It could be a rock, okay? So just as long as there's a bit of an oscillation between light and dark, it means you just kind of keep certain things light, certain things you tone in, and just kind of keep that theme going, this kind of back and forth dialogue between light source and something within the scene that's reflecting that light. That becomes your lighting scheme, okay? You lose your lighting scheme only when you've toned everything within a given space the exact same value, okay? Which might happen. I mean, like on a, you know, maybe a foggy day or something like that. There's less contrasts going. You know, everything kind of might be muted or something like that. But that's if you're kind of making a statement about that aspect of the lighting, okay? But even so, I still go for a little bit of change in values. Even on a very low contrast composition. It just creates a little bit more variation, you know, to keep the surface quality kind of a little bit more interesting, I think, to do that. In other words, everything's just not all the same. Okay, so there's a little bit of lights and darks in here. See, I've left some things light. I do have a pretty good saturation going with a lot of the area. Alright, that's the gray. Let's go with black now, okay? Quite a big jump in value, but the way I'm going to use it, it's going to be more of a kind of gray scales, variations of gray, okay? I'm using a very light touch, okay, and I'm staying in one area. I'm not trying to tone in the whole thing. I'm just working a really small space, so it might be a part of a wave, and that's the way I get these nice kind of transitions of value added, okay? I'm not trying to tone in everything. I'm not thinking sky, land, everything, sea all at once. Everything's not coming into focus kind of like all at once. I'm just kind of working small little areas, okay? Work little areas or objects and get those transitions kind of defined before you kind of move on. And that way you get a nice transition of tone like that, okay? See, I haven't even touched over here yet with the black. I'm just kind of working like small little areas right now. It's the corners. This stylus tool can get into areas pretty good, you know, if you use it on its edge like that, but in many instances, something like a pen will work much better, so I'll kind of employ both tools at some given point. Okay, here we go with this kind of trying to blend in the that blocky area that was around that. Okay, let's bring this into the ocean down here. Kind of follow the lighting scheme that you have developed with your first colors, okay? So if you've left it white with the gray ink, kind of follow suit. I mean, it doesn't mean you can't go into it with the black, you know, if you decide to, you want to, but just in general, I'm kind of sticking with my general lighting scheme that I've already established. But like I said, things change, you know. I get into it a little bit more and think, oh, I should have done this or that, and then you can always do that. Or you can go back to the gray and add more gray if you want to. Kind of adding some shadows underneath the crests of the wave. I'm kind of wiping it in kind of a direction of the wave like that, okay? Might as well just go with the spirit of the stamp, the design, if you can. You can see these little areas on the waves, these little kind of shadows, okay? And I'm going to be doing that type of thing to develop my shadows a little bit. Kind of in that same direction. So again, you look for the shading on the design, okay, and you reiterate it with additional tone or color, additional values. Looking a little bit more turbulent as we go. Alright, let's create a little bit of a separation between surface and sky. I'll make the area a little bit darker. I want it kind of illuminated, so I don't want the area completely dark. I want the surface of the ocean to be reflecting a lot of that light coming from the lightning strike. So I won't do everything. I'll leave it kind of light in some areas. But again, I want it to kind of have variation there, so there's going to be that oscillation between light and dark in there. I use a lot of this tip here as it's fairly dry, so I'm kind of just applying kind of variations of gray. This is one of the things about doing a half page. There's just a lot more surface area to cover. I should pause this video and just finish up a lot of this and then resume. Of course, you can always just toggle ahead. This might be going on for another few minutes. Okay, let's see. Darken in the surrounding area around that lightning. I want the lightning to really stand out, so I'll make the area around it darker, and that'll make that kind of pop out due to the contrast. One of the things too is that Memento gray is kind of setting up and drying on here, and it's a very slippery, thick ink, so as that gets drier on here, I can get really a lot darker with the black because more of the black is getting kind of sitting on the surface of the paper and absorbing and, you know, just applying in general. So I do want the slipperiness of that Memento, kind of freshly applied Memento too, just so I'm, you know, the black is easier to kind of spread out on there. But at some point in time I do want my areas to get a little bit darker, and that's where kind of applying the inks on a drier piece of paper is working for that. Okay. Using a lot of my edge of the applicator. Going for this type of touch. Okay, now let's take a look. I'm holding it at kind of away from me, seeing if anything needs to be done. This needs to be anchored down. It's kind of too... It's floating. Visually, I'm not talking about the ship, but it needs to get anchored down with some additional tone at the base of it so that it looks like it's sitting in the water, I think, more than it is now. So let's create a stronger shadow area around it. Something like that. Let's go with a stronger shadow around it here too. I'm kind of making the shadow, building it out from this and kind of wisping that shadow out in both directions. Okay, it's kind of anchored down a little bit more. The darker you take the hue, or the value, I should say, or the hue, I guess the tone, the darker you take it, the kind of the more integrated it becomes with that surface. Okay, I don't want it floating like it's just kind of hovering there. I want it in that water, in other words. Okay. You see the contrast getting a little bit more extreme there. And I like that value there. Okay. Let's try to create some more of those values here and there. Okay, I'm going to mask off a bit of this horizon here. And get some of these clouds in here. Okay, back. Had to get the kids to kind of talk while playing their video games and not yell. I normally wait until I do these videos, but there's so many compositions that I feel like getting to, and media. I haven't even tried these new inks that I bought, and I want to try those out. Some metallics, and actually they're not inks, they're acrylics, liquid acrylics. I can't wait to use those. And I was going to do a different video, but then I remembered this ship and boy video. I mean, scene, and that's something I thought about a few days ago. And then I was thinking about watching that movie Castaway with Tom Hanks, which reminded me of it too, so. Okay, so that's what we have here. It's a little bit too light around there. Believe me, there's no kind of exact, you know, thing that's ideal or anything like that. Just as long as there's some variation, then I take a look at the overall, then I kind of decide if something needs to be you know, darkened a little bit more. Can't really bring back the light, but that's why I just kind of take things kind of nice and incrementally. I just wanted to tighten that area of light up around the face to focus a lot of the attention on the face down here. So if it's all light around that whole thing, then there's not as much of a kind of a narrow focus right there. So like it's right back in here, I can kind of make this a little bit darker. And that will, again, take, you know, put the face into kind of a, I don't know about greater focus, maybe focal point focus, I guess. Attention. Right. So like that. And as I'm doing this, I mean, if I do get to a point where I think, you know, and I should have used a little bit more of the whatever, you know, in this case it'd be the gray, you can always go back and add more of it, you know. It won't show up. You can't add the light gray over black and have it look light gray again. It'll just be, you know, a little bit darker perhaps, but if you left too much of the white of the paper, then, you know, you can always go back and add some gray into it. You don't have to do it just with the with whatever color you're going with. In the lighter areas, you can always go back and add more tone using a previous, you know, color that you've already used. Okay, all right. Okay. Now, let's add in some additional tone. Let's introduce hue into it, all right? Now, I'm thinking about, I was thinking about going with something that's, I want it to be somewhat turbulent in here, okay? So, or really turbulent, I should say. So I'm not going to go, I don't think I'm going to go with blues. I want to go with something a little bit more kind of off kilter, you know, something that's a little bit unsettling from a color standpoint, okay? Now the lightning, I think let's go in and let's add a little bit of a warm tinge to it using, this is an antique linen. Right? And I'll kind of establish a little bit of a warm tone in here with that. Okay. So adding some of this warm tone into my lighter areas. Some areas that are kind of capturing and reflecting some of that light. Okay. Boy's face. So we've established kind of a little bit of a, you know, light source and reflected light dynamic, hopefully. That. I won't go over the bolts too much because I still want those bolts to be, you know, fairly light. Alright, now why don't I go in with, oh, I was going to say green, maybe some purples or something like that. I want to see something, I just want to see like a different color scheme, like something deep, and I mean greens would be good too. Green or purple, something like that. I can use my eggplant, I haven't used that in a long time. I want to go with, I don't know, I just want to use something kind of a little bit unexpected here in terms of the color scheme. Let's just go for it. Alright, let's see. This is an orchid. Let's see what I have in terms of that color scheme. It's kind of a sweet plum, eggplant. I don't have a lot of kind of pale tones of this color scheme, I don't think. Some different pinks would be good. I think I have an Adirondack light. I forgot the name of the color. I think something. Oh well, let's just go with this. Well, I tell you what. Where did I just see it? I have a walnut. I think the walnut would be a good kind of base color for my color scheme that I'm working with now. I just had it in my hand, now I just lost it. There's tea dye. Where's all my distressing pads? Oh. Walnut stain. Let's go to some of this before I add some other colors in here. Okay. This walnut stain hopefully will kind of give me a kind of a foundation, kind of a warmth. And I'll add it around roughly where I have some of the that other distress ink. I can't remember if it was antique linen or the tea dye that I just used for that. Okay. I think I've officially kind of entered the ugly phase of this scene here. Hopefully I can kind of resurrect it and pull it out, but sometimes that's what it looks like with the undertones that you kind of lay down until you get into some of the until you develop the color scheme a little bit more. Alright, now this is Sweet Plum by Memento. And I'll just kind of start applying this in various areas over some of those distress inks, okay? So we'll change the hue a little bit, but hopefully that distress ink will provide a nice kind of warm base layer color. Okay, and I'll develop my shadows a little bit more with this color. Going into some of my clouds, and even over the black, you know, the black and gray can potentially achieve kind of a richer looking surface quality, or hue, a more developed hue, more complex hue, by adding this tone into it, or just additional tones, whatever color you choose to go with. Not just for this composition either, for any composition. Alright, so we have this right in here. It still looks really bizarre in terms of the color scheme, which I guess is what I wanted. Just wanted the kind of unexpected. Alright, this is the orchid. The Marvy matchable. That is that eggplant. Let's see what that one looks like. It might be fairly dark, so test it out a little bit. Well, if it did used to be fairly dark, my pad is fairly dry now, so it is probably not the straight incarnation of that color, but kind of a muted, dry one. Okay, let's go to the sky. Really ominous looking cloud up there. Alright. Now, let's see. Boy, it's hard to imagine. This is my next color that I have available. It's violet. I didn't do too many purplish scenes. It might have a kind of a tinge of it, but this one's kind of becoming a very dominant, purple dominant one. I say that because this violet right here is a very dark one. So I guess I just have to go right into it. Alright, it isn't applying so fast either because of all my base layers, so it's kind of like applying it into, you know, a semi-wet surface, so it's not, you know, I don't see like that, you know, anything too dark right off the bat. Okay, in the deep. Maybe the title of this piece could be Castaway. Should have a little bit of a island or something like that out there in the distance. Or some palm trees somewhere. Alright. A little bit too brown there, huh? Let's take that out. Too rusty. Okay. Kind of get. I feel like this scene is kind of getting there, ever so slowly. Which is often the case, surprisingly, or, you know, not with larger scenes. I find it, you know, half-page scenes or whatever. I feel like they kind of go on this, you know, they take you on this journey of, you know, extreme exploration and resolve, just because there's so much potential kind of visual dialogue going from, you know, one side of the card to the next, one side of the scene to the next. Color changes, temperature changes, lighting, especially lighting, I guess. But this in the sky, I had no idea that I would take that as dark as it is there. But I don't know, I thought it would look better, maybe. More dramatic. Things are getting darker and darker. And I don't know, it's kind of, I feel like it's getting more ominous too. threat, you know, the storm. Slightly more threatening kind of feel to it, which I guess would be, you know, if you darken it in like that. Let me try something. One of the darkest blues is a Prussian blue. You can use like a navy blue or something like that. And then I think maybe I'll go back to black, I'm not sure. Pretty good blue. It's really, really dark. Okay, this blue looks pretty good on here. It's pretty bright, and I'm surprised that it reads as blue over some of these areas. I don't know, Prussian blue it's a pretty dominant color as far as the application goes. Like I said, it's fairly thin too, so it really penetrates, but I'm surprised it almost looks like pure blue in some of these areas. Or I'm surprised because it's going over the other colors like violet and gray and black. I'm surprised it's showing up as much as it is in those dark areas. Alright, Prussian blue, wow. What a color. Or what a ink, I should say, by Marvy. Should just leave its mark for sure. Okay. Let's try to go back to black and see what that does. Okay. Alright. A lot of visual dialogue going on here in terms of lighting and reflected light. I'm going to knock some of these areas down a little bit. There's too much light in some of the areas, I think. Although I do have plans for some of these areas. Kind of like this little passage right in here, though. Okay, let's have some fun with some alcohol inks. I have a lot of different choices I can go with here. Just because of the number of colors that I've used, I can go through a lot of the different colors that I've already applied, and as long as you kind of stay within the family of colors, it should be fine. I mean, you can introduce new colors too, maybe, but I kind of actually I didn't use that yellow one. Let's try something like this. I wonder if I have a really dark gray too. Let's see. Yeah, it's fairly dark. It's not real dark. But let's see. Let's go in and develop some of our shadows in here, okay? There's a lot of things you can do, like I said, with the stylus tools and sponging methods and whatnot, but you know, there are some areas that are just too detailed and it's really hard to get like right on the edge of something. Which you don't have to, but you can kind of develop more detailed areas with much more detail oriented tools and media. So marker is one of those things, like if I want to get right underneath this cresting wave, I can do that with the alcohol marker, or just marker in general. Could be a water-based one too if you want to. Let's see. Let's start off with some lighter tones though. Let's go with this blue one. And I'm just kind of coloring in some of the shadows. It's looking a little bit too bluish, but I'll go over it with the violet and pink, you know. Color in some of the shadows of the face. Do it in blue, because the waters are cold. But he'll find his way onto the shore pretty soon. Or maybe it's one of those things where they kind of, you notice how in the shipwreck things, they always kind of wake up on on the shore somehow. They've kind of floated somehow. And I guess from pure exhaustion they kind of wake up on the shore. Let's get a little bit of color into this galleon or whatever it is. Ship. Okay, this one's more of a slight violet looking blue. Salvia blue. Oh. Doesn't look like the salvia on the Marvy pad, but yeah, maybe it's close. I don't know. I hope that squeaking isn't driving you nuts. I kind of like it. I'm not trying to do it, but just what it sounds like on glossy paper when it's being applied. I'm using the side of this brush tip 2 thing, as well as the tip. Alright, some of that blue needed to get kind of blended in. You can use the lighter tones as like a blending tool. It doesn't move tremendously like it, this alcohol marker on certain types of paper, but it moves around okay. You can kind of still influence some of the application of it a little bit. It'll kind of blend it out a little bit. It'll put the ink back into solution to an extent. Okay, some of it is kind of holding, not super firm, but a little bit. This is a really light pink. Okay. Some kind of that warm tone. Developed. This is a brown here. I thought I'd throw a little of this into the shadows, maybe. That is quite ominous, I would say. I have plans for this too. I plan on trying some of that splatter painting application of bleed-proof white watercolor. But let's go and add some variations of our different color scheme that we've used in here, which has been quite a lot. But we applied some different tones using the alcohol pens. Now I have a lot of different colors of gel pens here in some of the colors used out of our color scheme. And we can apply some different textures. There's a lot of kind of ocean spray and mist. Now normally I'd do this all in white, but since I have a lot of colors, I'm going to apply some these different tones. I'll do kind of multi-hue details in here. This one's it's a medium tone violet. And what I'm doing is I'm just kind of creating this little bit of a sea mist kind of spray coming off of the waves, some of them. And I think that texture will serve us well, maybe. I don't know. Seeing this composition is quite crazy in terms of everything that's going on in it. Occasionally, or maybe more than that, there are scenes that I'll be working on where I just have no idea where they're kind of going. And this might be one of them. But I just keep developing it and working it and just seeing where it'll go. Okay, that's like a violet tone. Here's a lighter violet. Okay. Kind of a... I don't know if that's white lightning still, or if I went over it with some of the inks, but let's try to develop some of the highlights now with a similar hue for my lighting, which is white. This is the Shuttle Art white from my pen gigantic set, and it's quite a bit thinner than the ink. It's quite a bit thinner than my Uniball one, so that might serve me well here, because it'll be a little bit more translucent, so the colors, it won't stand out as much, which is what I want sometimes in a gel pen application of color. Okay, or white. You know, I just don't want it to stand out so much sometimes. Okay, kind of developing the crest of some of these waves like that. Having some of that spin drift coming off of them like so. This wave right here got covered quite a bit, but with ink and a cloud, so I won't put too much of this into it. Okay. That looks pretty good there. I'll hit some of the waves around the head. If your pen stops working, that's what I do. I just give it, put the cap on, give it some wax. Okay, kind of developing some different areas. It's looking a little bit more dynamic. If I want to kind of follow the contours of some of the waveforms, I can just kind of a few little dots on them like that, just to kind of define them a little bit more. I mean, there's so much texture working in here, and it does become a little bit obscured with all the colors that are running over them, but you just kind of want to kind of reestablish some of these forms. You can do that with things like these highlights. It might not make sense from a kind of a lighting perspective, but just from a textural perspective, it's kind of nice. So sometimes things aren't don't have to really make sense, you know. That's what I always say. Just as long as they look good, you know, then why not? Okay, we have these little kind of lines, dotty lines around some of the forms, just to make them stand out a little bit. Okay, and I'll introduce some of that type of look into some of the sky area around these clouds. Clouds can be reflecting a lot of that light that's being caused by the lightning bolt strike. Kind of on the side of the cloud facing the light. And I put a few more dots in those areas facing the light. I don't put it on the bottom side of it, it's only on the side that's facing it. So clouds to the right of the lightning have our left side illuminated, and clouds to the left are right side illuminated. Okay. That's kind of a sharp textural lighting statement. Now let's go into our soft textural lighting statement, which will be some pigment inks and a pigment ink applicator, in terms of, which would be a cotton swab that's been kind of frayed a little bit. Loosen it up. So don't ink yours up that much. My pad is super dry, so just a couple light dabs. If your pads are like most pads, which are very juicy with pigment ink, okay? Light dabs around my lightning, okay? To make that lightning seem a little bit more kind of glowing and illuminated. Maybe I won't do it over everything, but maybe the main bolt or something like that. Maybe a couple other ones. You can see it kind of puts a nice little glow into some, but I think that looks better to oscillate it, not do it over everything. Okay. Just so you have a little bit of textural contrast within that space. Okay. Maybe another one. Okay. Let's put some on some clouds out here. See, I'm just kind of working one small area. I'm not going like this. Okay, again, you're just kind of using a light touch. Well, I don't know. I'm not using so much of a light touch, but my tip here is really quite dry with ink. But, see, I'm just working that tiny little area there. Little, I don't know, 1/4 inch maybe for a while. I'm developing it. I'm going to put some on my water surface. It's a very turbulent sea, so there's a lot of water spray, ocean spray in the air, so that when the lightning strikes and there's a flash of light across the surface, there's a lot of moisture in the air that's illuminating all that moisture in the air. Okay, maybe the horizon line can get a little bit obscured, and same with the parts of the ship. See this part of the ship right here. Let's put that in a bank of a lot of spray. Okay. See that sail? I'm going to take my white pen and just kind of put a little bit of a illumination alongside that. Maybe I'll get rid of that line. So it looks like the sail, you know, is being illuminated by that light. Okay, on the sides that are facing that lightning bolt. Like that. It kind of just reiterates a little bit, or a lot, the direction of light within the scene. Okay, let's do that same type of thing. That looks a lot more developed back there now, I think. Okay, let's do the same thing for some of our foreground areas, okay? Put the... This is a white pigment ink, so it's going to be the lightest pigment ink, of course. Let me see if this one will do. This is a cool Perry. Maybe I should try to use some of this one too. When I applied this one last time, though, I thought, wow, that looks kind of white again, but I guess it is kind of a little bit darker with a cooler temp, but this will be a good test for it here, because everything's fairly dark. Alright, let's see. Adirondack lights. Not around anymore. And in fact, Adirondack anything isn't around anymore, but this is just a pale... Well, it is a pale violet. Okay. But when I apply it down here, I don't know, I guess it doesn't look white. Okay, this is probably a lot more akin to the type of pad you'll be working with, you know, much newer. Okay, so I have to fray this up a little bit. If you want a soft application of something, it's easier to use a soft applicator, you know, whatever it might be that you're doing that with. I find these to work very well, though. But you can use those like different things like daubers and whatever. I guess it is darker. It isn't standing out as much, which might be fine. But I think I do want it to stand out a touch more than I can see here. So maybe I'll go for a thicker application of it. I'll go with a, you know, a wetter, straight out of the pad application because it is darker. In other words, so if I put a, you know, pretty decent slathering, it really doesn't show up as much as using white on dark. Okay, this is a crisp wave, but I'll put a little bit of a kind of a softer type of a light on it as well. Let me see, let me use some of the white again. I'm going to turn the head a little bit. By saying that, I mean I'm going to make some of it a little bit lighter, just to get in some variation into my subject matter. I'll oscillate a little bit. It'll be a little bit of pigment ink, a little bit not. Tell ya, it feels kind of weird putting that subject matter into peril like that, but he's an actor and he's in a movie set here in this scene. Kid Robinson Crusoe. And he wanted to be in this movie. He beat out 1,000 other people that tried out, so don't worry about him too much. He's now doing the talk show circuit. Okay, a little bit more obscurity in the sails here. Alright, definitely looking a little bit softer in there. Now let's see if we can do something fairly dynamic in here with some of the splatter paint applications of watercolor. Let me define some of the additional splashes in here before I do that, though, because sometimes it's hard to add these gel pen dots after I go in and do that splatter painting technique, just because the surface is so coated with paint. It's kind of hard to draw over the top of them because they're kind of chalky. So I'm just going in here and adding in my little details. Well, I still can. I mean, I could still do that later, but I'll get most of them here. This is a very, exact application of these little highlights, whereas the splatter painting is, for me, it's a very inexact application by far. Okay, so let me go get that ready. This is a bleed-proof white, and I need a toothbrush. I haven't done this for a while, so I need to see. Okay, I didn't. This thing is so stiff. I need to wash these off because I didn't wash them off after the last time I did that. But this bleed-proof reconstitutes really beautifully, and all I'd have to do is add water to this, and that will come right off. It'll go back into solution. So do that. Okay, I've laid out some papers here, just so that when I splatter, I'm going to try to avoid getting it all over my desk here and keep it on the paper, but I've added a little bit of water to this, and I'm stirring it up. I want it to be the consistency of like a, I don't know, I always forget how I describe it. It's like a very thin maple syrup or something like that. Store-bought, like a, not real maple syrup. Something like that. Okay, now let me see. I'm not even sure. Are these brushes about the same? One of them seems softer. Not that one's better than the other, I think they're a little bit different. Okay, now, just in general, I think I'll put some splashes coming from here, maybe in here, maybe around the ship. I really don't know, but let's say if these waves are kind of crashing that way, I'll generally kind of hit it from that way, maybe, and see if it splashes out that way. I don't always have control over this. I just don't do this often enough to where I can say it's really a, very much of a technique. Now I've dipped this in here. Now I'm kind of taking some of it off, otherwise it'll kind of drip, which is okay sometimes if you want kind of a variation of a size. Works great for things like stars. Base of waterfalls, maybe. Anywhere you have like splashing water as an element. But yeah, I really like it as stars too. Okay. Alright, let's see here. I'm going to do a little test thing to see what it's going to look like. It looks okay, I guess. It's like that. And the more you do it, it changes because there's less and less ink on here, so I don't always have really good control. I certainly don't have pinpoint control over it. So it's going over this whole area. Sometimes I can kind of get it to where it's a little bit under control. Maybe when there's less ink on there, then I can kind of get kind of a finer spray sometimes. Maybe I do want a finer spray. I'm going to remove some of the ink here. Boy, there's a lot of paint in there. Then itself would be kind of an interesting texture for I don't know, some purpose. Okay, something like that. I'm going to remove some of it. Some of it's like on his face in an area that I don't really want it. And I can color some of these too. If I don't want it white, I can kind of put some ink over it, and some of the dots can be purple or something like that, because they will accept ink. Okay, let's add some around the ship. I'll kind of mask off some of it, maybe. I'm just kind of masking it off so it's maybe a little bit more layered, like that. Okay, there we go. Way too much around his face. Look at my thumb. But this really dries up pretty quickly. That's still a little bit of blob, but all these perimeter splashes are fine. They're dry now. It's a really quick drying process. And let's see. I'll just take my scratch knife here, and I'll just take off some of these. They just kind of come off like little crumbs. There's one that got around the eye. I don't want that. I don't know if I want that big blob right there either. It might look okay, but I'm just going to remove it. Oh, it's still a little wet. I'll just buff it right out. It comes right out. No problem. There's a little squiggle there for some reason. Take that right out. Oh, there's some in the sky. Maybe not in the sky. A little overspray, maybe. Definitely turbulent as far as the storm goes. So, now that we have all that texture down, you can kind of go back in and, like I said, you can kind of refine things a little bit more if you want to. Let's see if I can add in some of these highlights with the gel pen. Some areas became lighter, just due to the fact that you've added all that texture down there in white splashes, Yeah. I didn't add as much as I thought I might, so I could still go in with my gel pen here and bring some things out a little bit more so. Bring the face out a little bit more. bring this cresting wave. My piece here feels really crumbly working on it because of all that pebbled kind of little splotches of white paint. It's very textural around here. Some brighter highlights, lighter highlights in here. And we have something like that. Really long piece. I'm saying, does this look stormy? And I guess it does. Not too many things more stormy than, I guess, a shipwreck at sea or whatever with the gigantic crashing waves. Not a storm like an inland type of thing, but a storm nonetheless, so. Anyways, a little bit of a dialogue between whatever, man overboard and a tipping old ship, galleon or whatever, crashing waves, slanted landscapes to give a little bit of a dynamic, kind of a unsettled imbalance to the scene, you know, to add to the kind of emotional quality. This lightning I've tipped the other way to kind of, I don't know, it doesn't counterbalance it, but it kind of stays within that theme. So everything's just kind of off kilter a little bit. The color scheme's off kilter, you know, from definitely something kind of soothing, but we have that kind of muddier, kind of a warm tone underneath the purples and whatnot. Kind of everything's in theme here, I guess. So yeah, there's my second storm or stormy weather scene for this month's challenge. And I don't know, I would say it was a lot of fun, but it was kind of a I don't know, it was a challenge in terms of creating something kind of a little bit more it's usually, this is the opposite kind of emotional quality that I'm typically going for in a scene. So I don't know, it's different for me. It's a good challenge, and something to remember, I guess. Alright, thanks for watching.